To record it, and
Yeah.
bye everybody.
Okay, thank you, Michael. All right, this is our third class. This is called the UFO and Paranormal Review, sponsored by MUFON, Connecticut MUFON. And this is our third class. We already had class number 1 where we talked about the soul and the human body, and this is going to be a lot of what we talk about tonight, and focusing on the soul being independent and the physical body where we come into it, because we're going to be talking about reincarnation and life before life, which I think you'll find very interesting. And last week we talked about the near-death experience, leaving the body and going up to what we call the heaven world. And for lack of a better picture, this is Earth, and we leave our body and go up to the astral planes. So tonight, when we talk about coming back, we're going to be coming back down from the astral planes to the physical Earth. We will be talking about reincarnation, and of course, that brings us a little bit to getting information that doesn't coincide with our history that's taught in schools. And I think we're all beginning to realize that there's a lot of ancient history that has that we don't know about, as being hidden from us on purpose. So this is going to lend into next week's information about ancient civilizations. We're going to talk about Atlantis and Lemuria. We're going to talk about inside Earth. Did civilizations go live inside our Earth? Oh, absolutely. We're going to talk about Antarctica. We're going to talk about the DUMBs, which are the deep military underground bases, and some of the ancient hidden technology that's been, we aren't allowed, but is being used in other places, which is not fair. And then week number 5, which was April 14th, I broke because it happens to be school break. And, you know, a lot of people go on vacation, but not so much now with COVID, where a lot of us are not going anywhere. So I asked Michael if we could, if you want to, if anybody would be interested, if we could meet that night. It'd have to be at 7:15 because he has another commitment. And he opens the pathway here, the Zoom pathway for me to use. He said it would have to be at 7:15, but I wanted you to, if you would be interested in talking about conspiracy theories and going down the rabbit hole. And you know what I would want to do, got a whole list of stuff that we just threw. What do you think about 9/11? What do you think about chemtrails? What do you think about AI? What do you think about the Illuminati? What do you think about, you know,
oh yeah, sign me up for that. I'll be there. I'll be there at 7:15.
Yes, I will too. I will too. This is Tracy. Yes, I will definitely join you.
Great, great. And we won't delve into like 9/11 or the, you know, to really deep. We'll just like skim it and say, okay, how do you feel about that? You know, and this, that, and the other. And I think it'll be really good for us to feel like, yeah, there's a lot of people that think the same way as I do, or not. So I think it might be entertaining. Good. I'll continue to make my list, and we will focus on that because there's a whole lot of stuff. Mentioning, I don't know if you've ever seen this, talking about stuff. There are 2 things out on the internet that you can Google. And we talked about this in my last class. These are called one's called the Awakening Map, and one's called the Q Map. And I don't know if you've seen these. They're kind of hard to see, but the Awakening Map looks like this. And what it is somebody wrote down words on a piece of paper, things, you know, concepts, whatever. And it's like, you know, a whole page of this. And then they take little lines and say, well, what does this have relating to this or that or this or that? And it's like, do I know anything about this? Do I know something about this? Do I know something about this? And it's really, really interesting. The other one, the QAnon map, is very similar. It's called the Q Map. It's very similar. And someone put all the little words down there, and little lines that show the relationships from one thing to the other. And I remember seeing this, and this was sent out or written up by the government of some kind. I don't even know where it came from. But when I was looking at it, I was seeing alien and UFO stuff here. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's too cool. You know, grays and, you know, those kind of things, and Area 51 and stuff. So very interesting. But anyway, aside from that, okay, we will plan, just put on your note that it'll be at 7:15 start instead of a 7 o'clock start. So next week, it's not next week, is it the 14th? That's the week after. Right? Yes, next week's the 7th. So we have our normal class next week, and that's on ancient civilizations. It is the 14th that will be conspiracy theories. Okay.
Mary,
Yeah.
I want to apologize to you. I didn't know that I didn't have my sound off. And it wasn't recording that you were hearing my horn. So I made an arrangement with my neighbor to do it at 9:05 after the class for every single Wednesday your class is on. So you won't hear it anymore.
We're like, boy, she's really waking him up.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was that loud, but it was.
I mean, I was able to still talk, but it definitely got our attention. I said, wow, that's her, you know, talking to her neighbor. I think it's a wonderful idea, but thank you. That's great. Thank you. All right. And then the week number 5, which is April 21st, I'm going to do the Secret Space Program, which is absolutely incredible. It's talking about what's already existed out in the universe or out in our world since the 50s and the 40s. And there are programs of us flying all over the place. And I say us, there are our world, our Americans and Germans and Russians, and these people they're flying all over the place, and they've been flying for a long time. So it's kind of a very, very interesting program. And then week number 6 on April 28th, we're going to talk about UFOs, encounters of the first, second, third kind. So we kind of go from, yeah, we're already doing all this stuff, but we come back to Earth and go, well, who's actually involved in Earth? What are they doing here? What is their agenda? And who are they? And what are they up to? So it's kind of a wrap up for this class. All right. Any questions or comments before I get started? Nope. Okay. So
one last one.
Sure.
When I'm trying to join you, I had to archive this the login because it's not you didn't post it this time in Yahoo Mail. So I'm just wondering, will I always be able to click onto that one that I archived to get into your class?
Yes, he kept the same one. So all you have to do is push that one button. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. That's all I want to know.
Okay. All right. And that's why I confirmed with him that I still had it for the 14th also. And he says, yes, you do. So we're all set. All right. So last week we talked about the near-death experience and life after death, going to the astral world. And we leave the body and we go to the astral planes, and we see people and we see God or Jesus, and we see amazing things on the other side. And we spend some time over there. And one of the books that two of the books that I'm going to have been using is these two, and I've mentioned them before. I'm going to be reading something out of this one, The Journey of Souls and the Destiny of Souls, by Dr. Newton, Dr. Newton. And he wrote a quick summary. So I'm going to run through this real quick for you. The summary of death and departure. That's a step number 1, death and departure, that most clients recall looking down at their body, seeing people mourning over their death, and they report staying around their loved ones until after their funeral. During this time, clients feel a pull towards a light and describe a tunnel of sorts to get there. Then number 2 is gateway to the spirit world. This is the stage where clients report moving through the tunnel and reaching the light at the end of the tunnel. And when they reach the end of the light, that's where they meet God or Jesus. They have a review of their lives. And they also find they're not in pain anymore. It's amazing. They feel love. They see beautiful visions, music, scenery. And they're just so happy, and they get met often by their guides also. After that, number 3 is homecoming. Here we're greeted by souls that are close to us. They may appear as luminous beings, but we can see their faces. On the other side, in the astral world, it looks very physical. There are plants and trees and bushes and buildings and people, and they all look like we do now. So it's almost like we bring with us our thoughts to the other side, and this world is a world of like thoughts. So everything seems to be relative to what we had here. So, if you expect to see, cars or something, or whatever you expect to see, that's what you're going to see on the other side. So there's a homecoming where you run into people that you know and love. And there's also, I mentioned touch. You're actually able to touch these people, and they're able to touch you. So that's amazing and very interesting. Then there's number 4 is orientation. During the orientation stage, a soul will shed all regrets and doubts, sadness, traumatic memories from our previous lives. We need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of it because we need to remember we've been souls before. So this is the reincarnation, the law of karma. We're going to talk about that tonight. We have been over on the other side many, many times, and most people refer to the other side as home, and that we're visiting Earth. So that's quite a different perspective. Going home, that's the other side. So we have orientation. We need to get rid of feeling like Mary, all my idiosyncrasies. I like chocolate. Well, I got to get rid of those. Pepsi, I got to stop thinking about that. And when I shed that, then I'll also remember who I was before and merge this lifetime with those other memories also. Then we have a transition time where it's a joyful time. People have described that there are people everywhere. Everywhere they look, there's people going here and there. It's a busy place. And they're going to classrooms. They're going to places to learn. They're learning outside. So it's a very busy place. And they're working with their guides and their masters and the beings that care about them. So once and sometimes you will spend years and years. Sometimes it'll be 5 or 10 years. Sometimes it'll be 50 years. Maybe it's 100 years on the other side before you're ready to come back down. You work with these other groups. You merge with families that not your biological families here on Earth, but your soul families. And there's sometimes a difference. And the soul families are souls that you've been developing with for a long period of time. Now, these soul members are very often souls or beings that will be part of your reincarnation. So as you discuss what you've learned and they discuss what they've learned, and you put things together and you start formulating in your mind, what do I need to learn for my next lifetime? What do I need to create and develop for my next lifetime? So I will grow and I will learn and I will be a better person or a better soul. So you start doing this kind of thing. And that brings you to a time when you're ready to come down. There is a life selection. Now, this is where it boggled my mind when they talked about the life selection, because in these books, he's done a lot of regressions where he's taken people back to a past life through their death experience and then asked them what's happening now. And he keeps them in a very deep state. So their information is really coming from deep memories. And then he put it together in a book. And so many of these people are having the same type of experience and using almost the same words for these experiences, which is very interesting. And many of them say, I need to go to the ring of destiny to be able to choose my next life. And this is what has boggled my mind. I only read these books a couple years ago, and they shook me to the core. They really did. I sat back and I said, okay, wait a minute. I'm not sure. I won't say I don't believe it, but if this is all true, then I've got a real problem with the whole process. And I'll explain in a moment. So when they have the life selection, they go to this large room, a ring of destiny. And what they say is that in this room, there are screens, like not quite like computer screens, but like if you were looking through a large window and it's kind of shimmering a little bit, but you can look through these large windows, and some say they're all around the room, and they're the only ones in the room except for maybe a master or guide. And they're looking at these visions of Earth and people on Earth and New York City. In this one case that I was reading, this man wants to be a musician. And he let his guides and people know, my next life, I want to be an accomplished musician. I want to be able to play the piano. I want to be able to share my talent with others. So they say, okay, let's pick some lives that you can look at and you can choose from. Okay, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, time out. You want to do what? You're going to look at existing lives? Yes, this is exactly what they're saying. Existing lives on Earth. So this person that wants to come back is standing there looking out these visions to the streets of New York. And they say, I can hear the beeping of the cars. I can hear this. I can even smell the hot dogs. You know, it is so real. And I'm watching these people and the hustle and the bustle and everything. And I have chosen this one person and they're showing them to me. Okay, now, if they're showing you a person that you're going to be, but you're not there yet, how is that happening? And they're showing them this person. They say, okay, here's a person you can choose. Would you like this person? Okay, are we talking about like holograms? You know, like remember on Star Trek, they go to the hologram deck and they push a button and they, I guess they say what they want to do. And then they go into a door and then they run around and make believe that they're somewhere. And then they come back out. Is that what we're kind of doing here? So anyway, they go, okay, I want to choose that. But they're not sure that they want me to have that person. They have another one in Buenos Aires and they have another one in Paris. So I get my choice. Do I want that person in Buenos Aires or do I want one in Paris or do I want this one in New York? Show me some of it. So they're allowed to see a little movie clip, if you will, of the person, their childhood, maybe their teen years, maybe their 20s and 30s or whatever, snippets, okay? They said that they can even go and feel like they're in it and observe it. I mean, this is, to me, mind-boggling because, of course, we stumble with the whole concept of time being linear. And if time isn't necessarily linear, but it's all happening now, then it's only a possibility of you projecting yourself in that time frame or that time frame. And to you, that would be your now. So I'm not ready to get into that. It's way over my head. But he's allowed to choose. And he says, okay, no, I'm going to choose that that chubby little ugly kid in New York. And the guide or someone or the hypnotist says, well, why do you want to choose that child? And he says, because of my, I'm not appealing, and I would therefore focus more on developing my abilities. I'll practice more than if I was a really good looking kid out running around all the time or involved in sports. Because I'm ungainly and I'm kind of not overly attractive, I'll be more inclined to focus on my developing my ability. And I like those parents because those parents in New York City are very wealthy and love music. So would be very inclined to promote this for me. All right. So this is an interesting concept. And I won't even call it a concept because he seems to be getting this information from many people that all say the same thing. I read fascinating accounts in these books of people under regression saying, I'm getting ready to be born and I'm going to orchestrate an accident to cripple me so that I will develop my writing skills. And sure enough, they see this whole thing pan out in their past life. and the child falls out of the carriage underneath the wheels run over the child's legs, and the child's crippled. And for the rest of their life, they have learned to dedicate, channel their energy into writing. But that's what they wanted to do. So it wasn't an accident. It was a stepping stone to help them get to their destiny. So it's all very mind-boggling. It's all rather overwhelming. And I'm gonna move this a little closer so I can see better. So this person, these people choose their next life, and then they have to go to the preparation room. Okay, so in the preparation room, what they do is they meet with others that are going to coordinate with them in their next life. You're going to be my mom, you're going to be my dad, or you're going to be my brother or sister, you're going to be my best friend, you're going to be my wife. So a lot of these are orchestrated even before you're born. And those people need to know that you're going to be helping them attain their goals, because they've also chosen lifetimes, and they're there to help you gain your goals. And we did talk about creating this blueprint in our life. And when we go through this blueprint, along the way, we have people, places, things that will happen to us that will trigger and will make us be able to accomplish our goal. And then they go through a process of trying to embed in our thinking signs that this person is important. So there'll be a little sign. Maybe they'll wear something special, like a cross or something. When you see that cross, you won't remember consciously, but your soul will go, bingo, there's something going on here. I need to know this person. So it will help you meet the people that you need to meet. And so you accomplish your goal again. So we think we just are born. I mean, there seems to be a tremendous amount of work involved in creating a life plan for you and getting you ready to come back.
Mary, can I ask you something?
Absolutely.
What about the people who plan to come down and they get aborted? I'm just wondering about all the babies that have been aborted. And there's thousands compared to what way historically ever happened before.
I know. I think part of that too is our free will. And I think in the back of their mind, they know that it's a possibility, but perhaps they're hoping that the person will change their mind, and the free will allow the process to continue and not be disappointed. So, again, remember that the abortion is not killing the soul, but it is killing a being. It is killing. So it is killing. It's killing a being. The soul goes out. In fact, we're going to talk about this. A soul that has been, let's say, the parents had a child and it died once it was born or something. Sometimes that soul will go out, and then for the next child that they create, the same soul will come in and inhabit the next child. So that's really an interesting thought, that if you've lost a child, there is a possibility that the soul of the child you lost is actually the soul that comes back in the next child, which is very, very interesting. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is I want to talk about rebirth, because I have this amazing book that I want to talk about, a little skinny book called Life Before Life by Helen Wambach. But to set the stage, I want to read one thing, because remember, I say that the soul is independent of the human body, and the soul is coming in and using the human brain, because the soul has the mind. So we have two different things. We have the human brain and the human animal. And I'm going to again suggest, and you're going to find when I read this, they say it too, that this human animal can exist on its own. It does not need a soul. The human animal, maybe even in ancient times before souls started coming into the earth populations, they were self-sufficient. They get hungry, they know how to survive, they know how to kill, they know how to eat, they know how to procreate. They are an animalistic, but they are a level of intelligence too. So there is the animal, we'll call it the avatar, but the animal. And then the human soul comes in with the mind, the human mind. And this genealogy is totally different than the biological genealogy of the human body. I call the car a vehicle. And we come in for the period of time, and when we die, we leave. Okay, so what we're going to talk about right now is I'm going to read you a little blurb, and I'm going to read it because the way the words he used is the actual words of the person who's hypnotized. So I don't want to ad-lib it. It's very interesting. And this person is talking to the doctor under deep hypnosis that he's coming back and that the baby is in the tummy, and he is going to introduce himself to the human fetus. Okay, so this is what the this little story is, and I think you're going to find it rather intriguing. All right, now the doctor has him deeply hypnotized, and oops, wrong book. This one actually seems to be the more advanced book, so maybe this is the second book. All right, so the doctor says to the patient, or he calls them clients, who's hypnotized. He says, tell me what it's like to enter the mind of a baby and when you usually enter. And the subject says, in the beginning, I think it's like a betrothal. I mean, like we're merging. I enter my current body in the 8th month. So he may hang around. Now, remember, the parents have created the fetus. The fetus is in the mom's tummy. The soul is floating around. Now, the soul has been connected with the fetus through what's called the astral cord, or it's called the silver cord. And so they've got, let's say, dibs on that fetus. Nothing else and no one else can have that fetus. That soul is attached to the fetus. Some souls get involved with the fetus right away, right? Within 3 months. This particular soul says, no, I'd rather wait till around the 8th month, more towards the end of the pregnancy. The doctor says, well, isn't there a downside to entering late? I mean, you are dealing with a more independent individual. And he says, some of my friends feel that way, but I don't. I want to be able to talk with a child when there is more mutual awareness. So the doctor goes, excuse me, you're going to talk to the fetus? And he goes, the person laughs and says, of course, we interact with the child. So the doctor says, okay, take me through this slowly. Who says what first? The man says, the child may say, who are you? And I answer, a friend who has come to play and be a part of you. And the doctor says, well, isn't that deceitful? You haven't come to play, you've come to take over. You're going to occupy this child's mind. And the guy goes, oh, please, who have you been talking to? This mind and my soul were created to be together. Do you think I am some sort of foreign intruder? I've joined with babies who welcome me as if I were expected. Well, there are souls who've had different experiences. I know, he says. Some souls are clumsy. They go in like bulls in a china shop, and they just kind of over-eager trying to push around the child's mind. And it's too much energy too quickly, and that upsets the child. So the man says, in your current lifetime, was the child at all anxious about your entry? No, they don't even know enough yet to be anxious. I began by caressing the brain. I am able to immediately project warm thoughts of love and companionship. Most of the babies just accept me as being part of themselves. A few hold back, like this current body here. Oh, really? What was unusual about this child, this fetus? Well, it wasn't a big deal. Its thoughts were, now that you're here, who am I going to be? So there was this confusion of the child who is aware of its existence, aware of its independence, and that it is something. And then this other something is trying to intrude and merge with it. And that's confusing it. I think that this is a very big deal, says the doctor. Essentially, the child is acknowledging that its identity is partially depending on you. The patient says, yes, the child has begun to ask himself, who am I? Some children are more aware of this than others. A few are resistant because to them, we are an irritation to their inert beginning. In other words, the child is very relaxed, it's chilling, it's kind of non. And then this high level soul, and remember, our souls have been in existence for a long time, very intelligent, and bring with them a lot of knowledge. And it's poking, into the brain of this poor little fetus is like just chilling. So it's trying to get in there and make itself known. So do you feel that the child senses it's being forced to give up something of its individuality? No, he says, we have come as souls to give the child depth of personality. It's being enhanced by our presence. Without us, they would largely function as unripened fruit. Okay, so right there, he's saying, without us, they could still exist, but they wouldn't be as much without the soul. And we have to keep that in mind because we're going to be talking a little bit more in a few minutes about soulless people. But anyway, the doctor says, does the child understand of this before birth? And he says, it only knows that I want to be friends so we can do things together. We begin by communicating with each other with simple things that it's uncomfortable body position, and it wants to, maybe the cords around its neck, and it's going to start getting upset. And I can calm it down and kind of give it advice as to how to handle this. So please continue, he says. I prepare the child for birth, which is going to be a shock when it happens. Imagine being forced out of a warm, comfortable, secure womb into bright lights of a hospital room, the noise, having to breathe air, being handled. The child appreciates my help because my primary goal now is to combat fear by soothing the brain and assurances that everything will be fine. And the doctor says, I wonder what it was like for children before souls came to help them. And he says the brain was too primitive back then to even conceptualize the trauma of birthing. There was little awareness. Of course, I wasn't around in those days. Okay. Are you able to calm the anxious mothers? And he talks a little bit about trying to also calm the mothers. And he says, I support the hard work of the merger. Is it all over now at the birth? He says, to be honest, the merger isn't complete yet for me. I talk to my body as a second entity up to the age of 6. It is better not to force a full meld right away. We play games as two people for a while. The doctor says, I've noticed a lot of little children have talked to themselves as if they were with an imaginary playmate. Is that their soul that they're talking to? And the soul of the man says, yes, that's right. Although our guides also enjoy playing with us as young children. And have you also noticed that the elderly starts talking to themselves a lot? They're preparing for separation at the end of their own way. In general, how do you feel about coming back to Earth in life after life? And the man says, it's a gift. This is a multifaceted planet. Sure, this planet brings heartache, but it is delightful too and incredibly beautiful. The human body is a marvel of form and structure. I'd never cease to be awed by each new body, the many different ways I can express myself in them, especially in the most important way, love. So here was even talking that children who act like they're, talking about their imaginary friend, it may be the soul. I mean, that was mind-boggling to me that it may be their soul that they're actually talking to and entertaining, or their guide, which is interesting. Any comments on that, or we'll just kind of put that one up on a shelf going, okay, that one was a little much. Okay.
Mary, actually, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. What do you think about the idea that the soul comes in that way?
I think it makes so much sense in a lot of different ways. And I think I've long believed that the soul and the mind were two different things. And I think my shock was that perhaps the physical body can exist without the soul. That was new for me. And I've been digesting that for 2 years. So I'm a little ahead of you guys on that. I think it's highly, highly probable, because now I'm working a lot with the cloning information and the transferring souls from the human body to the clones. And so I do believe that the soul is it's independent thing and can go or move or be moved around. This would also explain some of the horrible things that are going on Earth that would explain if they were soulless humans. It would allow us to understand or think then, people say, how could they ever do something so horrific? Well, there's not a soul there to soften things up, then maybe that's one of the reasons of the horrible things that are going on. I certainly can't say it's true or false or indifferent, but the material that I've studied seems to support the hype. And you look at some of these movies where they talk about the soul going into other forms, and I accept that 100%. I believe that we're souls and we go into other forms, but do those forms exist if the soul's not there? I don't know. I don't know. If we were psychic enough, we could certainly look and see if there's a soul in the forms. But right now, with Earth the way it is, and the clones and the AIs and all the other things that are running around that you think are human and they're not, I think we would be hard pressed to find another human. Like, okay, 1 out of every 10 is a real human and a real human and soul, and then those 9 are not. And so I think we need to really wake up with the whole concept of what's around us, because if they are souls and humans, then do they have different agendas? Do they have are their moral compasses the same as ours? Probably not. And therefore you can't depend on them to, be the same as you.
Right. Well, and one other interesting idea that might be helpful here, the idea, okay, so we're talking about soulless humans as in humans that are born without a soul. But, for example, in the shamanic traditions, they talk about soul loss and soul retrieval. And so the idea that through trauma, usually through some sort of trauma, humans will lose aspects. I don't know if they lose their entire soul or there's a concept of soul fragmentation. But there's certainly this idea that you can lose your soul or your aspects of your spirit through severe trauma. And so one of the tasks of the shaman is to retrieve the lost soul parts.
Okay.
So I don't know how that would apply here, because I think what the concept you're talking about is the idea of a person actually coming in and not having a soul at all.
Yes. I'm not trying to teach that necessarily. I'm just trying to throw it out there as a possibility that if a soul does not attach to a fetus, can that fetus be born and it's a soulless child? I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
I know Ruth Montgomery, she used to talk about walk-ins, and that was a concept back in the 80s I absolutely could not accept. Walk-ins, and that would be where a soul is in a human body and maybe has gone through some horrible trauma, maybe has been handicapped in some physical way from a car accident. And they basically say, I cannot deal with this. I cannot deal with this. I want out. And the soul is allowed to leave and another soul is allowed to come in. That's something that I couldn't accept. But now, maybe it's possible that can happen. I don't know. It's
there's one idea that occurs to me, and that is, and I don't want to take up too much time with this, obviously, but if there's such a thing as people coming in without souls, you know, they can still be a vessel for another being. Like you mentioned, walk-ins, so that could be alien beings, I guess, or, you know, other kinds of beings. And then there's also the idea that people can be, you know, I guess basically in that situation, vessels for more, I guess we'd say negative entities.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
I think we do have to leave it open a little bit for how do aliens occupy physical forms. Of course, you have the whole cloning thing, and the cloning tends to be with souls. So then maybe they're using those mostly for occupation on the physical earth. Again, there's just so much information that we don't know of what's happening out there. But I think it's imperative that we open our mind to understand that people in powerful positions, including people behind the pulpit, people in our schools, may not be like you. And if they're not like you, if they are under satanic control, if they are under alien control, if they are under non-soulless soul, then you cannot sit back and say, oh, the world's a wonderful place and all these people are doing good things, because I got news for everybody. No, their life is a mess right now, and there's a war going on. So if you don't know there's a war between the good and the light, you better know. So we need to identify and be aware and awake of you know, people, other agendas. You know, if this person's in power, are they really going to do what we want them to do? Better keep an eye on them. That's all. Just on them.
Yeah.
Can't put your feet up and say, hey, everything's cool. You know, I empower all these people to run the country. Guess what? If they're running it all right, but they're not for your benefit, all you have to do is look at COVID and all these other things that have happened. But anyway, go ahead. Somebody else want to say something? No? Okay, so we're going to get to something really cool now. This book here, this was amazing. I think I got this back in 1980s or 85. And it's kind of hard to come by because it's, I don't even know if they produced it anymore. But it was fascinating because it was a psychologist, and she was she was hypnotizing people, taking them back to the womb, back to being a fetus. And she was going to document whether or not they could hear their mama's voice. Could you hear music? You know, because people were talking and saying, hey, you can talk to your baby, they'll hear it. You play music to soothe the baby, you know, all these things. And she wanted to see if that was true. So she hypnotized 700 people to document. And right away, she ran into trouble, because right away, when she hypnotized the people and say, okay, you're in the womb, you know, you're the fetus. What are you feeling right now? And they go, yeah, I'm not in the womb. She goes, excuse me, who's not in the womb? They go, oh, I'm a soul. I'm the soul assigned to that fetus, but I'm not going to be in the womb. The baby's only 3 months old, or 4 months, 4 months. And, you know, it's barely a little wiggling turnip, you know. I'm not going to be in there. I'm floating out here. I'm observing my mom. I'm observing my dad. I'm observing life. And I'm just going to step aside 1 second here, because I forgot to tell you this. I've regressed people and I've talked to them, and they told me that they were up in heaven waiting to be born. They had chosen their parents, because you do choose your parents. We're going to talk about that in a minute in reincarnation. And he was watching his mom and dad date. And he knew that he would be their child in the future. But the mom didn't like the dad right away. She was giving him a hard time and not going out with him. And he was up there with his hand like this, like, oh my God, come on, get together, because, you know, I need to get born here. So, but he knew way ahead while his parents were dating So the soul seems to be very aware of what's going on before you're born. So poor little Helen Wambach here was asking the questions, and they were going, oh no, I'm not in there. So this was her first inclination that things were not going to go the way she thought they were going to go. So she had to start comprising questions, and she did. She created a whole book of basic questions, and I'm going to run through some of those. So then as she moved forward with the other 700, she documented what they had to say. And she asked a lot of them. One of the first questions were, did you choose to be born? And a lot of them, all of them say yes. Some of them said, I didn't want to come back. I knew my life was going to be difficult. I really didn't want to come back. I love it up there. It's happy, it's warm, it's beautiful, and it's fantastic. And I have to come back. And some come back for a negative karmic tie, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Some come back for other reasons, but some of them said they didn't want to come back. But most of them said, yes, I chose to come back, and I'm very excited about it. She asked them if they chose this time period, because remember, if you died and you're on the other side, you can stay there as long as you want. You don't have to come right back. And she said, did you choose to come back in this 20th century? And so many of them said, oh yes, absolutely. I wanted to come back. Number one, things are happening so fast now that if you're out of the loop for any period of time, it's almost hard to catch up. But many of them also said that they wanted to come back because there was going to be an awakening unlike any time in human history, and they wanted to be a part of it. And I think we're starting to see that period of awakening right now. And they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to be a part of the love movement and the very spiritual movement that Earth is going through, and they chose to come back for that. However, a lot of people, when they choose to come back for other reasons. We're going to talk about the law of karma, but you may choose to come back to be with a particular person. You may choose to come back because, remember, we were looking at that hologram of that life in New York. Well, maybe it was time for that life in New York to begin. So now's the time. You got to come back and you got to get in that body. So they would come back for that. They came back for reasons of whether or not America offered them opportunities. Let's say they came to America. They chose this country because it offered them opportunities they may not have gotten in Africa or in India. So we do choose these locations too, to offer us certain religious backgrounds, certain strengths that come by rules and regulations. So there may be many different reasons that people choose these different locations. And sometimes it's because in past lives, you've been familiar with those locations. And you may want to go back because you happen to like America or you happen to like India. So you feel attracted to those types of people and that energy that emits from there. So you may actually choose that. I mean, this is mind-boggling when you think and you look at this little baby being born and you're like, oh, it just happened. Well, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it's like a miracle that all these things took place to get this baby ready to come out on Earth. They asked too, did you choose whether you want to be a male or a female? And some of them would say it didn't matter what they were because they could work through either one. But some of them said, no, I really wanted to be a male in this lifetime because it would afford me an opportunity to be demonstrative of more strength and protection. And that's what I needed to learn in this lifetime. And some women said, I wanted to be a woman. And a lot of them said, I wanted to be a woman so that I could be a mother, that I could bring in other souls to Earth. Now, remember, if we talk about how many more people are on Earth now than there were before, and if you keep in mind that the universe is full of souls all over the place, and the souls are attracted to that planet, and there's some souls attracted to that plane of existence, and to that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. and only some are attracted to Earth. A lot of them, but Earth's a tough place to be in. So there's only so many bodies, and the souls that want to be here, there may be a holding pattern. There may be a lot of souls that want to come in. So you almost say, well, gee, that would not support empty bodies. I mean, empty souls, bodies with no souls. It would seem to suggest there's a lot of souls that want to come in, but I'm not going to I don't understand all of that. But they choose to come in as mothers so that they can provide a vehicle for children and to raise those children and to mother those children and bring them into, give them life. I was hypnotized one time back to my childhood, this lifetime, and they asked me, why did I choose my parents? And I did not know either one of my parents. And I chose them as examples of what I did not want to be. But I came in. So to me, they were kind of just I hate to say just an entry port, but they were just a way for me to get into on Earth and to move on to what I had to do. And my mother was very gentle and giving, and my father was a taker. And I'm like, there needs to be a balance between give and take, that you can be functional and still good in both ways. So they were a good example for me. But, you know, you leave home when you're 17 or 18, and you never go back. So it's just, whoop, that's that. So she also asked, what do you feel about when you're being born? Do you feel any of the sensations? And they're like, oh, yes, I'm very involved. When the child is being born, the soul has a tendency to get in the body to help the child be born. They said, I need to help, you know, get through. I need to help my mom, you know, her energy. I need to encourage her. I need to encourage the baby. I mean, this is amazing when you think about the birth process, and that there's a soul in the baby that's involved in trying to make everything work out very nicely, and very anxious for it to be born. And many of the souls said that after I was born, when I came through the birth canal into the bright lights, and it was very perfunctional. Everybody in there were very nice, but they weren't very caring. I mean, I didn't feel like they were like focusing to me. They were just, is the baby breathing? Is it warm? You know, functional things, make sure it's okay, you know, measure it, you know, smack it upside the head or whatever, make it breathe. And it was just very perfunctional. But when they felt the mother's chest and were actually being able to be held by the mother, then it was a real relief to them. But the older days, a lot of the children, that was very cold and very perfunctional, and they noticed that. So the child is very aware before they're born. The soul says, I know my mother is depressed. She does not want to be pregnant. She does not want to have another baby. And I'm going to have to deal with that. You know, my mother doesn't want me. The other souls may say, I'm a little girl, and I know that my father wants boys. So there's going to be disappointment when I'm born. They know all this before they're even born. They're aware of everything, the feelings, the information, how their mother feels, and the love between their mom and dad, the hate between the mom and dad. They're aware of all this. And they're aware, keep in mind, of a high level soul who's highly educated, very knowledgeable, and very spiritual, that once they come into this physical form, they're going to lose all that. But during the birth process, they still have that level of awareness and that level of knowledge to be able to assimilate information and be aware of what happened in the room. I remember in a past life, I went through the birth process, and unfortunately, I was being born breech. And they had called the doctor, and this was back in the 15 or 1600s, and I was being given birth. They were giving birth in a room at the house. And the doctor came, and he was smashed. He was drunk as a skunk. And I remember I knew as a soul that that doctor was incapacitated. And I was stuck and he grabbed me by the legs and kept jerking me, trying to pull me out of my mother. And finally I said to the hypnotist that I was talking to that my mother is gone. And I think she just passed out, but she was gone. She was no longer there. Her soul had left. And I was by myself, and he finally, every time he jerked me, my head was turned like this, and he kept cracking my head until he broke my neck. And he pulls me out and he holds me by the feet. Now I'm a soul, and I'm over here looking at my little fetus body hanging by the feet while this drunk doctor holds me up. My neck is broken and I'm dead. And I was devastated. I was like, I worked so hard. I planned so hard, and this idiot just killed me. And I was so upset. Now, we did not go into whether or not this was a karmic thing for me. Was it something that I needed to learn from being denied a life? Or was it purely a free will accident where this doctor shouldn't have done what he did? I don't know, but it was very interesting. The level of awareness, my ability to analyze the situation, my understanding was not of a baby. It was of a high level soul in the middle of a birth process. So this book continues about how many of these people are coming back into this lifetime to be with somebody they know. And almost all of them said, yes, I will be meeting up with somebody I know from a prior lifetime, or I know one of my parents, but not the other. And this is interesting because sometimes parents have a connection to one of their children that's stronger than the other child. And they feel bad that they don't love the two exactly the same. But if it's possible that they've spent many lifetimes with this one child and have never met the other child because the other child came in for the father or the uncle. Okay, that's their soul pass. So that's why you would have the stronger connection with this one particular child. So these people that were hypnotized were saying, oh yes, we're definitely coming in to meet up with, because we'll know certain people here in the earth at this time. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment when we talk about reincarnation and karma. I'm going to pause for just a minute. Please, if you need to say something, just say Mary. Any comments on this? Any thoughts on this information? No? Okay. I just want to glance real quick. I really enjoyed this question that she had. She says, why are you here? Why are you here? Why did you choose to come here? And so many of them had so many different reasons. And keep in mind, we're going to talk about reincarnation. A lot of them come back because they purposely want to become better individuals. They want to become stronger. They want to develop love. And the common theme is the power of unconditional love. And I go back to Jesus being an example here of showing how we can be in a physical form and still reach out to others with that level of unconditional love. So as an example, we need to try to reach that goal. That should be one of our number one goals, is to be able to love unconditionally, which is very hard. A lot of people say, well, I'll love you if you love me. Well, that's not how it's supposed to work. If you love that person, love them. Let them know that you love them. And if they don't reciprocate, that's okay. You gave them some love. They may not get that from other people, and they may put that in their pocket, and that may be part of their life. It may not be reciprocated, but it's something that's okay. You can love unconditionally. People may hurt you, and you still need to love them unconditionally. But if it reaches a point where it is adversely affecting you, then there's no reason to stay in that relationship. You don't need to keep that partnership or that friendship. You need to just extract yourself, still love them unconditionally, but say, right now, this is not a good vibe for me. So you are detrimental to me, and I cannot help or change that. So thus, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. But, continue to care. And even if you can't love unconditionally others that you run into, if you can at least neutralize the situation, and by neutralizing the situation, you're not creating a karmic tie with that person. Karmic ties are difficult because they will always bring you back together. And if you dislike someone or even hate them, then guess what? You're going to be brought back together in a future life, and you're going to have to work it out. So why not neutralize it now so you don't have to deal with it at another time? Neutralize it. And one of my ways that I do that is not by forgiving them, but instead accepting them. Because by forgiving them is putting you in a higher level, a higher position. And no one has the right to do that, really. You're saying you did not meet my expectations, therefore I forgive you. Who are you to say that? Maybe what they did, what happened to them in their lives, and how they encountered life, that's what caused them to act the way they did. You just need to accept that that's where they are in their life growth. And yes, you were disappointed. You accept that that's all that they could give you at that time. Okay. So it's an accepting process. Why are you here also is that they also wanted to be a part of the changing here in America or the changing in the world. They wanted to be actively involved, and they were very excited about being involved in the changes. And especially for this time period. And let's see, all of those I already went through. I think I got all the little questions. Yep. Okay. All right. So I forget what this article was, but do we choose our lives before we're born? This was from another different life information. So that was Helen Wambach's experience into past life regression and going back to the fetus or going back to the womb. It wasn't what she expected, but it was very exciting. And I won't say that this is evidence of a soul's involvement with the human body, but when you start getting this information here, and you do past life regressions, not searching for this, but it comes up that way, and near-death experiences that say the soul is separate, but they come back because they have a reason for being here. Well, it kind of gives credence to the concepts. All right. Okay. Any questions, comments? Because we're going to go now to reincarnation and the law of karma. No? Okay. All right. Reincarnation seemed to take fruition, or really came into conversations back in the 80s. Dick Sutphin was a very interesting man out in California. He started a lot of past life regressions, and it went ballistic through the airwaves and through books. He had Past Lives, Future Loves, Born Again to Be Together. He wrote a lot of books, and he also created tapes that you could, I have several in the back, that you could actually play that would allow you to be regressed. And the whole concept of we've lived before, and that we've been somebody before, and who are we? But I began working with it in the 1985. We found that we were working with it to help people heal. And one of the things we were finding was that if you have a relationship issue now, if you have pain, phobia, fear, those kind of things, if we can hypnotize you and take you back to when it started, and we don't care what you come up with. If you want to go back to this lifetime and you're 10 years old and something happened, that's fine. But if under regression, you're back in the 1400s or the year 2000 BC, that's fine too. and you relate a story of what is happening to you. And a hypnotist, I used 3 professional hypnotists, and they were very good, and they would focus on the issue. And sometimes people would sidestep and they wouldn't want to address that issue, but they would keep pecking at them until we would get the story of what happened to cause them to be the way they are. And the stories are incredible. I mean, and when a person is under hypnosis and they're telling their story, the story is going like this, okay? It's not, if you were to create a story, you would pause and say, okay, let's say you're an Indian. You would pause as you're telling a story just to kind of think, okay, what time period am I in? What would I be wearing at that time? What would I be living in? So there would be a pausing as you create something. These people are not creating this. They can't even keep up with what they're seeing. They're talking so fast. And when I'm under these regressions, and I've had like 20 of them, you're seeing a whole panorama of stuff going on in the buildings and the people and all these kind of things, but you're verbally only saying so much to the regressionist. And it's amazing. It's shocking, surprising. Things come out of you like, whoa, where'd that come from? That's not what I would have thought, you know? And then when you come to what happened, the stories are usually not what you would expect. They are amazing stories. And once we take them through that stories, and sometimes there's more than one life that is causing the fear, phobia, or relationship issue. But once we force them to look at that life, and then the hypnotist is really good. And he says, okay, let's, number one, that doesn't belong in this life. But I want you to look around that life and pick out something that's positive, something that's good, something that really made you happy at one time in that life. And then he would get them to remember that. He says, that's what I want you to bring back with you now. Leave that other trauma behind you. Bring this other thing back. So they would heal these people. And I mean, even physical problems that would be healed because they saw the root of what was happening. I'll give you an example. Dick Suffin, this is one of in his book. He had a female in this lifetime, but she was a male in the prior lifetime, riding her horse across the desert. She was by herself. He was by himself, and all of a sudden the horse rears up because there's a snake or there's something there, and he gets flipped off the horse, lands on his back, and breaks his back. Now, in this lifetime, this person went to this professional hypnotist because she had a fear, ungodly fear of feathers. I mean, no one could help her. She had been to psychologists, psychiatrists, everything, but she would totally freak out any feathers, okay? So under regression, he's lying there in the desert. His back is broken, but he's alive, looking up. No one's there to help him. There's nothing he can do. And the vultures come. And they ended up killing him. And the trauma of not being able to do anything for himself and going through that horrific death impregnated itself in the soul so strongly that when he was born this time as a woman, the fear, the phobia was there. Now, the fear and the phobia may exist to some degree, but knowing what is causing it is huge, and they can address it. They can see that that happened then. Besides, they're in Connecticut. There's no vultures here. But the whole idea, the whole concept of trying to understand what caused this issue and then try to relieve it, try to get rid of it, and do it in a conscious, logical manner. And it may take some time, but the relationship issues are incredible. I mean, some of these relationships issues when they just can't get along with someone and then they take them back, and there was some major trauma between those two in a past life. And sometimes by recognizing what it is, they're not blaming other things or reasons. They can say, okay, that's what happened in our last lifetime. How do we work through this? And they can do it in a constructive manner. So the past life regression therapy is amazing. And it is daunting to work with sometimes because you do have to make people face some horrific things. But if you're a good hypnotist, you know how to separate them from the trauma and from the emotions. There are going to be strong commands of, separating yourself from these. So, but it is very, very healing, and it's incredible. So even if these people are making this stuff up, if we're healing them, who cares? Okay, we just did something their psychiatrist couldn't do. We did something that their psychologist couldn't do, or their doctor couldn't do. They've had physical pains. Sometimes they even will have a mark on their body from a traumatic injury. A man who was in a past life, in this lifetime, he keeps having heart issues, and he has like a birthmark on his chest. And he's been to doctors, and they go, dude, your heart is fine. You just got anxiety or something. You're fine. Well, under regression, guess what? He was in a war, and he was running over the hill, and he was only 22 years old, and he got shot right in the chest. Boom, he was dead. And the trauma of that shot, that death, has, stuck to him so strongly that in this lifetime, it's manifested itself as ghost pains, but it's a soul pain. Okay, it's a soul pain manifesting in the physical body. So by identifying where it was coming from, guess what? He's like, okay, I can leave it in the past. That's not today. That's not in this lifetime. And so he can get over it and heal. So it is amazing stuff that they do with past life regressions. And I will say right now, all three of my regressionists, one died and the other two are really not available. They're very older. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. So 40 years. We started in 1980s. So they're not available. And I don't know of anybody really. I think MUFON has one man that does past life regressions, but I'm not sure. So I would have to, if someone asked me for a recommendation, I have no recommendations at all. I have done them, but I am not trained. So I will do it, with my kids or with a friend or something, but I would never take it upon myself to take somebody that I don't know and put them under regression, because they can go through some really trauma. My little daughter, she started to die, and I was, in her past life, she was dying. So she was going through the death, and I wasn't trained. And I'm like, oh my God, she stopped moving, and her breathing got very shallow. She was experiencing death. And because she was a child when she died, I wasn't ready for it. It caught me off guard. So it was like one of those, wake up, don't wake up. So I'm not properly trained for this, but that was fascinating information. And because of these past life regressions, we're seeing Earth in places that are not in our history books. And both of my daughters, they were in places, and I'm like, where are you? We don't have places like that. Well, I'm on Earth. So I started enjoying in my classes. I will do my entire class as a regression, but is more a visualization process. It's not really regressing them. So I will do all 10 of them, or 15 or 20 of them sitting in chairs, and I will take them back to ancient before fire time, because that's safer. That's all make believe. You think, okay, that has to be make believe to go that far back in time. But I will tell you, a lot of them had experiences with aliens. A lot of them had experiences with beings from the stars that came down to teach them how to, plant food and wear clothes. And a lot of them were not human in those past, like ancient regressions. So it was so much fun to, after everybody woke up or came out of the regression, to sit around and say, who are you? What were you? Who were you? What were you? So it was a lot of fun. But let's come back to the whole concept of reincarnation. And anybody have anything? Because I just keep on going. I'm sorry. I just get in the groove. Are you all asleep, or are you still with me? Okay. All right. The main thing about reincarnation is called the law of karma, Karma. And the law of karma is basically action, reaction. What you sow, you will reap. It's the law of the Bible. Bible says it. What you do to others comes back. And that's the simplicity of karma. Karma is basically saying, as you live your life, if you do nice things to others, you will be rewarded with what's called positive karma. If you hurt others and do bad things, negative karma, such as bad luck, will come to you. Okay? So it's the action reaction. You reap what you sow. The problem is sometimes you don't reap what you sow in one lifetime. So one of the things I really enjoy about numerology, when I do people's charts, numerology charts, and again, I don't do tarot, auras. I do them for my classes. I don't do it as a separate, hire me type of thing. But I do it for my classes because I have to prove to them that it works. So I do all of them. I'll do a palm reading for everybody. I'll do a numerology reading for everybody. I'll do auras. We do all of that for everybody because I need them to see it works. Okay. So numerology is very powerful because it's the numbers that you chose when you were born. And when you chose these numbers and the astrological sign, you also have karmic numbers or the lack of numbers in your name. And when I do a person's chart, I can see the karmic numbers that's affecting their soul in this lifetime. It's more generic. It's like, okay, you have you're lacking the feeling of responsibility. So, so you have to weave that karmic numbers that you see in their soul chart in the numerology, and it does show up. So it's kind of cool. So when we're born, we come in here with energy powers, our name, our birth date, our zodiac sign. These are energy powers to help our soul get through this life, okay? And the interesting thing is when a soul's coming in, it needs that window to come in because everything is working around that entry point. And if they don't come in during that entry point, so they're going to meet all these people and do all these things, they may miss out. And it's very much like when we shoot a missile to the moon. They have to gauge it and time it. So as it goes up, the moon comes around and boom, we have a match. They shoot it off too soon. Moon's over here. Guess what? Goodbye. And if you miss, on the other side, goodbye. So you have to time it. And same thing with a soul coming into Earth. Now, what happens if the baby's premature? Okay, something happened and it was not really expected. Something happened and the baby's premature. Guess what? That window is over here and the baby's coming in and the soul's coming into a different window. Now, it has to stop and decide, is that going to work? Will it still be able to salvage enough of this life to make it work? Or is it going to be a total waste? If it's a total waste, then the soul will decide to leave. And it's possible that the fetus will die too. And that's when sometimes these premature babies will die, is because the whole connection of the soul coming in and hitting their window is not going to work. But going back to the law of karma, when we come in to Earth, we have chosen our parents. We have chosen our time period. We chose all these things like we just talked about in Helen Wambach's book. Now, some people, we need to kind of digest this a little bit, because you can be with parents like I did, just as an entry point, basically. I love my parents, don't get me wrong. They were wonderful, they were great people. But I didn't have a connection from prior lifetimes. So that I had other things I needed to do. But like that man that was looking at the parents that would give him a wonderful opportunity for music, in New York. He was choosing those parents to provide him an environment he needed, okay? You may choose the parents because one of them you've been with many, many times. You may choose the parents, believe it or not, to teach them a lesson, okay? And it could be that the fetus was going to be damaged. Something happened and that baby was going to be born retarded or damaged. Remember, the soul is not retarded. The soul is not damaged. The soul is perfect and beautiful. It's coming into a vehicle that is broken, is damaged, and can only express itself in that vehicle as well as that vehicle can express itself. Okay, so this beautiful soul makes the decision that it's going to come in to the damaged fetus to help the parents learn a lesson. So when you look at a child that is handicapped or damaged, don't ever think that that child did something wrong and that's why it's karmically paying for it. It may be a volunteer situation to help the parents learn compassion, patience, understanding, embracing everything. So it's a wonderful growth opportunity. So many parents who have children of challenges say that that child has taught them so much, has given an opportunity to grow in so many different ways, and that they wouldn't have done normally. So it's a growth opportunity for everyone involved. It's not a bad karma. No one's paying anything. People are growing and learning what we've come here to do. Total love, unconditional love. Okay. So the soul may also come into these parents as a negative karmic tie. They may have had a bad situation with mom or dad in a prior lifetime, and now they need to come together in a family situation, which kind of locks everybody in for a period of time and make them face each other, okay? And there may be some underlying currents of irritation, but you still have a clean slate, which is why it's hidden from us as to what our past was. If we remembered all of our mother-in-laws and all our, past this and past that, it would be hard to deal with people on a flat playing field, You need to let all that hide from you. And these are new, okay, well, this is new. It's not. You've been with these people before. You've got baggage with these people before, but you're going to have an opportunity to learn and to grow. So you may be with family members because of negative, rough, tough past. And it needs to be worked out. You need to kind of figure it out and hopefully reach a loving point, or at least, like I said, neutralize the underlying issues. All right. Any questions so far as we're going through all this?
Hello, I'd just like to make a comment about something you were talking about just a short while ago.
Yeah.
With going into a body, a soul is perfect, but sometimes the body has got things going on, and it made me think about when I was a kid. My mother used to babysit for back then we called them retarded kids.
Yes.
They're single mother, and so she worked during the day, and so we used to, and so I'd spent I won't say a lot of time with them, but time during the day when I wasn't at school or whatever, and played with them and stuff like that. And I gotta say, it's just an interesting observation I've had over the years that it seems like retarded people, yeah, they're good people inside, and like you say, that it's what I say is they don't know enough to put the mask on and to behave certain ways, like we all do, when we get up to go to work in the morning, or we're gonna, how to act in front of people. And they really do live in the moment. And I think that they are very in tune with everything that's around them right then and there.
Mhm.
It's kind of fascinating. It's since then, I've encountered other, people with the same kind of thing. And it's, they're very sensitive and it's kind of interesting if you look at it that way, that you say, well, it's not really, you know, it's not them, it's just the body that they're in. So anyway, I just had to comment on that because it made me think of that. And it's like, yeah, I think they are just as good of a gauge as anyone else. If you had your king's court with the scientists and the military generals and the philosophers and the mathematicians, I think you need a couple of people like that on there, and just watch how they behave when somebody comes in to talk to them.
Yeah.
They could probably tell you, just through intuition or whatever, if they were not up to snuff. Thanks.
Mhm. No, and we continue that way because even now, our souls are so much more, and we're restricted by this heavy, dense body. And the dense body is basically keeping us from being totally the totally expressive soul. So some of us are in worse shape than others, and because we're given a body, it depends on how well you take care of it. And if you do the drugs in it, or if you do alcohol, if you do whatever, it negates your ability even more. So you really have to. God said, and Jesus said, your body is your temple, and you got to keep it healthy and clean. But again, your mind is perfect and amazing, but can only express itself through the physical form, the physical brain, and the brain is also restricting the mind. The brain. And I laugh because we're only using what percent of our brain? What if the mind could activate the rest of the brain? But I think somebody has messed with our DNA and turned that off. But right now, even if you were to have an accident where you're a painter and you love to paint and draw and you have an amazing ability, but if you're in an accident and your hand gets shattered, it's not that you're not capable of doing that anymore, but you're physically unable to. Okay. So again, the human body is the restrictive nature of the soul. And we need to kind of keep that in mind. Relationships, you also may be, a child may choose a parent because they need to be with the aunt or the uncle, and the aunt can't have children. So this child wants to be with that and needs to be engaged with that aunt. It will be born to this family who's a sister and be just wonderfully attached to the aunt. Okay. That makes people, makes you feel good that even if you can't have a child, that there will be a child that will find its way, including an adoption. And I find it mind-boggling to read that a child that needs to be adopted actually has souls, angels, and guides and beings that's helping manipulate things so that adoption is taken place by the person they need to be. So for anyone who has an adopted child, it is very possible that that child chose that parent and worked very hard through the logistics to get to that parent. And again, I mentioned if a parent has a child that dies, it is possible that that soul from that same child comes back and is born again through the next child. I read about twins and how funny it is sometimes with the two souls that are coming in and trying to decide which fetus it wants. And they may argue or whatever, and this one's that, but they solidify and they're born. And it may be that they know each other from a prior lifetime and they wanted this wonderful opportunity to be born together. And they may not know the parents, but they have this wonderful history, soul history, and they're going to enjoy that. And so we have lots of reasons that we choose our parents. And then we leave our home and we have the opportunity to choose a husband and a wife. And I think it's very important that we keep in mind that there are souls that have come here that really don't want or need to be partnered with somebody. They have a purpose that is more inclined to being on their own, and their life in this lifetime is not one of being a parent. They're there for something else. And we need to embrace those and say, fine, everyone doesn't have to be, married and have children and blah, blah, blah. That's not what we're all here for. So I think we're seeing more and more of that in this generation and these years of people doing exactly what they want, and not necessarily following the procedure and process of husband, wife, and children. All right. Any questions or comments here? All right.
Hi, Mary.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Susan. Just testing out my microphone because I couldn't respond to your other sessions because my microphone wouldn't work. But I just wanted to say that regarding, children, I have a child that I sponsored in India.
Wow.
Yes. And usually when somebody sponsors a child, the agency will cut off the relationship when that child gets to be 19. That's the last age that you can be in communication with the child. But it's amazing because I asked to keep up the communication with this child, and the agency said, no, we're not going to do that. However, the child got in touch with me.
Oh.
And we are in touch on Facebook all the time for like the last 10 years. He calls me mom,
Wow.
He has a mom. He has parents, but he calls me mom. I know that we had a very strong relationship in a past life.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to add that. So thank you.
Beautiful. That is wonderful. That is amazing. Do you think you'll ever get to meet him?
Well, I'm hoping, if I can travel over there to meet him. He always wants me to come over, or he wants to come here. We're on Facebook all the time together. And so I don't know with the travel restrictions now, whether we're going to be able to ever meet up, but
I know.
it's just kind of amazing that he always refers me to mom, and I say second mom. But yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay. We are born here to take care of issues too from our past, and they can manifest themselves as health issues. And I remember a story, Edgar Cayce, back in the 80s when I was first learning a lot of things and studying. Edgar Cayce was one of the prominent book writers. And Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, if you don't know about him, out of Virginia Beach, he would go into a trance and focus on somebody and give a healing proposition. If there was a problem, they would go to Edgar Cayce and he would go into a vision and say, I see you, and this is your issue, and this is how you heal yourself. And he had one man come to him. And what happens is when he's laying there in the trance, if you will, his son or somebody else that he works with will write down the information. So he was in a trance, and this gentleman who had been suffering from asthma for years and years and years, to the point of almost suffocating. And he had been to all kinds of doctors, and they just could not really help him. And he went to Edgar Cayce and he says, I need help, and Edgar Cayce said, I'll focus on you. Okay. And Edgar Cayce went into his trance, and he said, I see you in your past. You lived in Germany, and you were one of the officers that was in charge of the camps. And you were part of the gassing of those camps. And you took great pride and you enjoyed it. And therefore, that evil, if you will, or that negativity has attached to your soul. And you need, as a soul, when you passed over and talked to your guides and angels, you were ashamed of yourself. You were, while you were here, you were caught up in the emotional and the this and everybody else doing this, and you got caught up in that. But as you pass over on the other side, you are ashamed of yourself, but you still have to pay for it. So God and the angels and the masters or whatever orchestrated a life where the law of karma comes and you are suffocating over and over and over again, because this is your payment. This is where you need to know what those people endured and what it was like. And this is something that cannot be fixed, will not be fixed, and you have to suffer for the rest of your life. But now the man understood it. He accepted responsibility. And he, moved on with the knowledge that he will have to suffer from these. So some of our health issues are from past lives that where they need to, not from a bad memory, but from a negative something that we did to others. We may have bad luck come upon us. We may lose a child. We may have death in the family. We may have accidents, things that happen to us because of what we might have done to others in a prior lifetime or in a 3 or 4 lifetimes before. It's not always sequential. It may be jump a few, because if you had an issue that you did something, especially in relationships, you can't just go back and address it in the next life. You need to grow. He or she needs to grow. You need to change. You need to develop. You need to learn more about yourself before you're brought back together to work things out. And so the same thing with your health issues and those types of negative karma. Sometimes you're not ready to face it right away. So they'll give you a lifetime or 2 or 3 to develop your abilities. We also have an opportunity in choosing lifetimes to maybe look ahead in the distance and say, I want to be able to do blah, blah, blah. But in able to do that, I need to learn certain things. For example, we had a lovely lady in our group. She was one of the most beautiful souls I had ever met. She was just amazing. And she had a past life fairly recent in the roaring 20s or something, or a little before that. And she went under under the regression. She came out, she says, my God, I was one of the nastiest, meanest people. I hated everybody. I was mean to everybody and everybody hated me. And we're looking at this beautiful woman like, why in the world would you have a life like that? And she says, but I understood, because one of the things the hypnotist will do at the end of a regression is say, what is your summary? How do you view this past life? What were the intent and reason for that past life? She says, I needed, in order to help others in this lifetime, I needed to know how deep hate can be. I needed to understand the emotional depth of anger, revenge, hate, because if I'm this happy little unicorn person running around life, and I'm trying to deal with someone who's angry and from a negative, life of drama and trauma, I have no clue. I'm not going to be able to help that person, okay? Because I've never lived it. I don't understand it. But having had that deep experience in her soul, she's able to identify and work with these in a different way. I had another woman under regression. She was hypnotized and she said, oh my gosh, she says, I must have been horribly deformed. And I know my parents, it was in England, and my parents loved me dearly, even though I was horribly deformed. They would dress me up in nice clothes, put me in a carriage, and take me out on Sunday so I could enjoy the fresh air. But if anybody saw me as the carriage went by, they would just stop, stare, and point. So she says, I know I looked horrific, but my parents loved me. They took good care of me. I didn't live long, but I had a good life considering how deformed I was and how retarded I was. And she says, now, Mary, and everybody else in the room, she says, do you understand what I do today? I am working with handicapped, retarded children. My whole life has been working with them. And I seem to have a knack of understanding these people, of being able to work with them. And now I know why, because I had a lifetime to get me ready, to help prepare me for this lifetime today. So, I mean, this is mind-boggling when you start looking at all these wonderful opportunities and these backgrounds. I mean, I had a lifetime back in the days before fire that has impacted me so strong that even today, I was a missionary back then and before fire, okay? I was a missionary back then, but I wasted my entire life teaching whole etherical concepts to bohemians. And these people, they just wanted to eat and grovel in the dirt and wear clothes. And I was like this missionary, and I was teaching lofty ideas. And I was so proud of myself when I died. And I passed over on the other side thinking I was so good because I taught all this wonderful stuff all my life. And I was over on the other side. I was sitting there in the kind of the mist. I hadn't gone to the light yet. And one of these little bohemians came in front of me. And I'm sitting there all pious. And this thing looked at me and said, but what did you do for me? And I looked at it and I said, what do you mean? I gave my whole life to teaching you people things. And it looked at me again and said, but what did you do for me? And I realized at that moment that I had wasted my entire life. So in this lifetime, I have a strong need and desire to teach things that people can actually use. When you get into New Age concepts and try to understand different religions, Buddhism, and all these types of things, it is very exciting. There's all places that you can go and learn of ancient knowledge and ancient history and stuff. But I keep coming back to, Mary, is this something that we can use today? Is this something we can apply to our lives to make it better and to actually implement them in some way? And so I chose not to grow in a lot of those ways, but to kind of stay more in the practical arena. And so it did impact me. And I didn't really know where it came from until I had that regression, which was an amazing regression, by the way. We had anti-gravity, we had all kinds of things back in those days. I got news for you. But it has impacted me. And so many of our past lives are impacting you in various ways that you don't even know. I mean, you may have fears and phobias. I have one. I get upset when I was a child when people took pumpkins and for Halloween and would stick them on picket fence, and I would get upset and I would go, oh, or I'd see something on TV where they would have chop off their head. And as a child, I would say, when I saw the head roll or whatever in a cartoon or something, I said, it's not like that in real life. There's strings and things attached. And I'm like, what the heck, as a child? And in a past life regression, it turns out I lived in the peasant revolt in France and I went through it. And I saw a lot of those. So the picket fence thing, those were pumpkins. Those were heads that I was seeing put on the fences. And it was very, very dramatic. And the interesting thing too, is when you're under regression, you're telling stories about things I don't know about. I don't know all about time periods and whatnot. And as I was in this regression, I remember having my hair all done up, and I remember seeing the sewer, and it was like shocking to me, the smell, and the sewers would just run down the streets. And I'm like, I don't know if I read that in history books. I imagine somewhere I did, but it was visual. It was very visual. And I remember, the peasant revolts and all that kind of thing. And the end was at the very end of my life. I was in a room with some other aristocrats because I was the Duchess of Edinburgh, but there were a lot of Duchesses of Edinburgh. That was a name that was thrown out a lot. But anyway, I was up in this room and we could hear them trying to break down the doors downstairs. And we're all frantic. And for the first time, my hair was long black hair. I didn't have it up. and they were screaming at me to hurry, hurry. And I had been trained to use certain leaves. And if you put a leaf and a leaf and a leaf and you light it, it creates a fume that if you breathe it in, it will gently kill you. So we knew that they were coming for us and we needed to kill ourselves before they got us, because it wasn't going to be pretty. But you can't practice this, okay? You can't practice the leaves. And I'm trying to remember which leaf and how do you do it. We're all frantic and everything. And I remember working on it, then it goes black. I don't know if they got us, or if I don't know, I figured it out and lit the leaves, and the fumes were able to kill us before they got us. And I chose not to venture in. We left it there. So it is, but it's very dramatic. When you're in these regressions, it is visual. I mean, the colors, you can feel the anxiety, you can feel the things. I tend to not be really directly involved, but when you're under regression, sometimes you'll speak, if you're French or something, you may start speaking a foreign language. We had a person that came out of a regression, and she was talking. She says, "Oh, I was a deaf person." And we're like, and she was busy talking. Her hands are moving like this. And we're watching her and we're going, "Sue, do you realize what you're doing?" She goes, "No, what am I doing?" We said, "Look at your hands." And the minute we called her attention to the fact that she was moving her hands, she couldn't do it anymore. It was done. I had a blind man in my class, and he brought a seeing eye dog. I remember the dog's name was Twinkles. And we had fun. We dowsed it. I don't know if you ever use dowsing rods, but you can douse auras. So we douse the aura of the dog. So it's kind of fun, but we do a lot of fun. But anyway, he's blind. We regressed him. He was in a life that had sight. He saw in his memories. He was able to see the colors, the people, what things look like. And in this lifetime, he's blind. So that was one of the more exciting ones. I remember that he was able to come out of it and say, "Wow," he said, I saw, I was able to see things. So, okay, I'll pause for a minute. Anybody want to ask questions or? Okay. We got about 10 more minutes here. So regressions are incredible things. They can help heal. They can help give you information, but you have to be ready for some of your past. Some people have seen very ugly things and ugly things of people who they might have been. So you have to accept that and understand it. But I will mention this, 90% of the people that we regress are boring peasant people. We don't have George Washington and, all these famous people that you say, "Oh, well, they're making it up." Guess what? They're not, because they're not giving me history book people. They're giving me just benign people that, work on their farms and go to a dance once a month or once a year. And, and that's it. That's their lives, boring lives. It's fun when we can actually project them to a special life. And when we work with a regressionist, they'll say, "Go to a special day." Well, guess what? Special day is dressing up for Sunday church. That's how exciting these lives were, a lot of those. But occasionally we'll get, a famous person, very rarely, or a person witnessing something that was very special. I was in a class in London, in England, and oh my God, now I can't remember, Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton was one of the guest speakers. But when he was speaking about something that I know nothing about in our history books. He was talking about cadavers or the body or the something about, and I'm like, wait a minute, Isaac Newton had nothing to do with that. So I don't know what happened in that regression, but I remember being at the school, the college or university. And when I went into the auditorium, I remember quite a few things. I remember the professors being in the long black gowns on the stage, lifted up a little bit. I remember the slant. I remember every one of the chairs were bolted into the floor. And I remember they were all boys, no females. And it was like this, you're seeing these things really, really quick. And yes, I mean, all of those make sense now that they are part of the history back then. I remember going and getting a little Johnny cake. And I remember that word just popped out. I went to a little place that was selling a Johnny cake. And I'm like, what the heck is a Johnny cake? And, you look it up and it's like there are powdered dough things, But I remember being in a dorm with a whole bunch of boys, all in cots. And I remember I didn't have an alarm clock, and I was always trying to figure out how I would wake up because I didn't have an alarm clock. Very interesting little things like that make it very intriguing of whether or not you're making things up or whether things are happening. Really, I'm buried on Nantucket. I was back in the 1600s or something, and a friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, says, "Well, Mary, let's go to Nantucket and find your grave, because I know my name, I know all that information, I know the store that my family had, etc." And so we had the information. We went to Nantucket, and I went downtown Nantucket and went to the library or the town hall, and I said to the girl, I said, "I'm buried here. And could I look at some of the old books and see if I can find my name or the family store?" And I knew exactly where my house was. And I knew the view from my house. And we went around, you ride bicycles and stuff on Nantucket. And I kept saying, "I'm on a little hill." And they're like, "No, there's really no hills or, real mountains or anything or hills in Nantucket." I said, "I was on a hill and I know exactly the view that I had." Finally, we found the place, but it was where the town had burned down, so it didn't exist anymore. And we found the house. I turned out I was Quaker. I was Quaker. I had never been a Quaker. I know nothing about Quaker. And yet in that regression, I knew about the book. I knew about the houses, the buildings. I drew one. It was all no windows downstairs. The windows were upstairs. It was tall. And, I knew all this stuff. I knew who the governor was. I almost remember Governor Andros or something. And I thought, oh, wow, I can verify that. So I looked thinking that Nantucket was under the rule of Boston at the time. So I looked up the Boston governor or the Massachusetts governor at the time, and it wasn't Andros. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm wrong. But then I looked and found out that New York at the time, I think, and I'm trying to recall this from 40 years ago, Andros was the governor of New York, and it turns out that Nantucket was under the jurisdiction of New York at that time. I saw the whalers, the whalers didn't process whaling stuff on the island, but they would come in with their accordions and dance. And I saw the Indians, all this stuff flooded, I just saw it. It was interesting. So if you've never had that opportunity, it is very, very exciting to explore these things. And you wake up and you go, did I make that up? I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think so. It came to me and surprised me. And I certainly didn't know all that, but you never know. You never know. And no, I didn't find my grave because the Quakers don't mark their graves. I'm like, okay, there's a graveyard, but there's no markers. There's no, they didn't have headstones. So anyway, all right. It's a wonderful way, to explore things. If I could only find certain people in history that had an association with something, it would be wonderful to focus on that person and see what kind of history we could get from that person's perspective of what was happening, or even if it's them. But I don't run into a lot of famous people, but we have run into some people that have seen exciting things. And you could write a lot of books by working with past life regressions on this stuff. And what if regressions, you go back to ancient time? I knew how to run with anti-gravity. I knew how to make myself lighter and run. So I got to remember this stuff. I'd like to go under hypnosis and remember how to do some of this. It's fascinating, the history that we get under regression, and whether we could put that in the books and see how it matches or doesn't match our history. And it doesn't match our history, I tell you right now. But We're going to find more about that next week when we talk about our ancient Lemuria and Atlantis, if you've ever heard about Atlantis and Lemuria. And who all's living underground, all the ancient civilizations that went underground, under Mount Shasta in Antarctica, Telos, all these places. Shocking information, but cool information. And I think you'll enjoy next week. So again, if you were not online when I was talking about the week of the 14th, that is not, we weren't going to have class, but I'm not going anywhere. So I asked Mike if he would allow us to go online and talk. We're going to do conspiracy theories. We're going to go down the rabbit hole. And so we're just going to throw things out. I've got a whole list of, things like 9/11 and chemtrails and fluoride in our water and false attacks and, things like that. Just throw them out. And if anybody wants to talk about them, we'll talk about them a little bit, but we're not going to go in depth in any of these things. We're just going to kind of glance at them and kind of see what's going on. And that would be on the 14th. And that would start at 7:15 until 9. Mike can't get on exactly at 7. So we're going to go at 7:15 to 9. So just give us a few minutes. Same thing, same channel, same everything. But that will be the 14th. I'll mention again next week. All right. Any questions, comments?
Yes, hi, Mary. I have a question regarding your past life regressions. I think you said you've had about 20 of them that you yourself have done.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm wondering, did it change from, like, did your experience deepen over time? Like from the time you had the very first past life regression done until, the 19th or the 20th, whatever, that in the beginning, maybe the types of memories or types of experiences you had in your recall, was that a very different kind of experience than what you had later?
Past life regression is definitely attributes that you need to develop. So you need to learn to relax and to follow the voice. You can't be distracted. So yes, more that you do it, especially if you have a particular one, you'll get used to very quickly going down. If you do a lot of meditation, if you do a lot of that kind of thing on your own, you will actually be harder for you because you're used to doing your own steps. And now you have to give that up. And he says, okay, I want you to do this because it has to relax you. So you go through a relaxation process. And so you do, and you get used to the voice, after a while. One of my hypnotists, Norton, I got so used to his voice, he'd just start and boom, I'd be under, I'd go under. I never went deep under though. I never went somnamblistic. I could always talk to him. If I was seeing something and he said, let's move along, I would say, oh, wait, no, we need to look at this a little closer. Or I don't want to look at this at all. Let's move on. So I never really went deep, but you do get better the more times you do it. And I have done ones where I used to hire the hypnotist come into my house here, and I left my living room bare. So there was no furniture in there. I have wall to wall carpet, and everyone would bring their pillow and blanket and they'd lay out there. And he would do 20 or some 25 at a time. And everyone we would not know if they were a regress. And that's harder sometimes because not one-on-one, but we had a high success rate. There were people who would actually experience a regression. And, but over the years, yes. And sometimes I was in deeper, sometimes one-on-one, of course, is the best. And that really can allow you. The one before fire was an hour and a half, and we recorded it, and I actually typed it up, and it's quite amazing. It really is. I'll talk a little bit about that next week when we talk about ancient history. So But did you have regressions where you weren't successful?
Well, I had one recently, and it was a little hard for me to understand the experience because it seemed a bit fragmented, and there were different components to it that didn't really make a lot of sense. And it was in a group setting, so there wasn't a lot of time to process it. But, you know, I thought this was a new experience, and so it could be that if I do it again, and maybe if I do it one-on-one, I'll have a more coherent, you know, kind of experience.
Oh, yeah, the first ones where you're just arbitrarily allowed to float anywhere and just go back in time. And we usually tell them to go back in a positive or neutral lifetime. So we tried to get rid of some of the ugly ones. It is sometimes vague. You know, if someone next to you is having a very strong thought, you can actually pick up theirs. It's you can pick up a TV show that may be going on. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you can pick up. And you never know.
It's random. Like, I think in the beginning it was more coherent, and then toward the middle, I think I was picking up somebody else's experience. I don't know. It was very
Absolutely.
random. I'll put it that way.
If you're sensitive in a group with people next to you, yes, that can be a major problem, is that you're picking up what theirs too, especially if theirs is kind of strong. And you wake up and go, wow, I had the same thing. Like, okay, one of you said it wasn't yours. Yep, that happens.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this was, I hope you learned some things. Some of this is really far out there. And as I always tell you, whatever's too far out for you, that's absolutely fine. Just put it on a shelf and say that goes there for now, because I really can't deal with that. And then later on, it may work part of the puzzle, or it may be something that will never be a part of your belief system. And that's perfectly all right. You know, this is a lot of strange material. Where I was in 1980 is a lot different than where I am today, because we continue to learn, we continue to study, and we have to be open-minded to some of the concepts that are just foreign. I mean, cloning alone and those kind of things, it's like, wow, you know, that wasn't around in 80s and 90s, but then the aliens weren't either. So anyway, I thank you very much for joining me again tonight. We'll see you next week at the normal time, 7 to 9, for Atlantis, Lemuria, and ancient civilizations and that kind of stuff. I think you'll enjoy that too. All right.
Thank you, Mary.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You guys
Great,
have a
Thank you.
great,
This is
by the way,
wonderful.
great class.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Mary.
good. I'm glad you joined.
Thank you, Mary. This is my first time attending your class, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh, well, welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed. What's your name?
Charlie.
Charlie. Charlie, I'm glad you were able to join us, and I hope you'll come back.
I definitely will. It'll be on my schedule, my agenda from now on.
All right, thank you.
Have a great week.
Absolutely wonderful,
Thank-
Mary.
Well, thank
Night.
you. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Thank you, Mary.
Go blow the horn. You gotta do your neighbors. 9:05.
That's it. All right. So 3 more minutes. Bye-bye, dear.
Bye.
Thanks, Mary. Segels and Patricia were here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you came back. Good.
Yeah, we were a little late. We just got home, but we saw about 45 minutes. Thank you. It was very.
Okay. Well, you might enjoy that conspiracy class that we're going to have on the 14th. I think you might like. Yeah.
We'll be there. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Have a super weekend. Happy Easter. Bye-bye.
Oh, yeah. Happy Easter. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody. Good night.